Welcome on stage. Francesca Serravalle, Head of Infrastructure and Energy with Vodafone. Neil McRae, Chief Network Strategist with Juniper Networks. Hrvoje Jerkovic, Core Network Director with 3UK. And Felicien Mathieu, CTO and Engineering Director with Worldwide Technology. As Annie said, my name is James Crawshaw. I'm an analyst with Omdia, an industry research firm. And in the absence of a roving mic, I will just stand here, I guess. So one of the key uses of telco cloud is to host the mobile packet core. It's probably come up a few times today already. And that mobile packet core over the course of the last 10 or so years has moved from being based on physical appliances to being based on virtualized network functions in 4G. And now with 5G, the core network functions are largely microservices based and containerized. And all of that transition from physical to containers is a lot easier said than done. A lot of operators, in fact, have delayed their implementation of the 5G core, partly because of the challenges of moving from virtual machines to containers. So what I'd like to start off this discussion with is what exactly have been the stumbling blocks and how have some operators managed to overcome them? Perhaps, Hrvoje, I can start with you on this question.
Me, sorry.
No, from 3UK. Sorry, I've forgotten how to pronounce your first name.
First of all, just to solve the first issue, my name is Hrvoje, which is very easy to pronounce, but only if you're local in Croatia, otherwise we will struggle. Now, coming back to your question. I think most of the operators in the world actually started this virtualization journey like 5, 6, 7 years ago. We built our own clouds, more or less we all did it on-prem, so we haven't migrated this to real public cloud. And we are kind of at the end of this journey, and guess what, now we are building a new cloud, fully containerized, for CNFs. We're still evaluating whether should we do it on-prem, off-prem. There are some advantages, disadvantages of both scenarios. And the example that you mentioned, the function that you mentioned, EPC is a really good, I would say, example opportunity, because what cloud provides us is, first of all, scalability, plenty of automation, implementation of AI, and all these very nice things from PowerPoints, but in reality, it can be a little bit more challenging and different. The function itself is really good opportunity to be kind of executed in the first row, in the first place. Why? Because this is very, I would say, hot topic. 5GSA is very hot topic in the last year and a half, 2 years in telco world. The challenge that we are facing is that some other functions are still not ready to be deployed as CNF. And therefore, we as operators have to accept the fact that we'll have to run 2 clouds in parallel for quite some time until we finish this migration from virtualized world to full cloud world, from VNF to CNF. And that creates a bit of challenge. And of course, once we finish the migration, hopefully new technology will arrive, so we'll talk about something else in the future. Yeah.
Just elaborate a little bit. Which particular applications is it a struggle to move to CNF from VNF?
Currently all operators are focusing more or less on data functions, and as far as we can see by scanning the vendor market, the voice functions, for example, or some other services are not in their focus, and some voice functions are still not, I would say, that proved or that on that high level of maturity to be deployed in CNF world.
Thank you. Okay. Any other perspectives from the panelists?
Shall I go?
Yes, please, yeah. Francesca.
Yes. Thank you. I guess I would add a few factors here. Obviously, the CNF readiness is one, but also I think the availability of device. But when we look at 5GSA specifically, What I would also mention is that, with 5G SA, we are introducing new capability, right, to the cloudification of all the core, as well as network slicing and service-based architecture. And if we want to unleash the full benefit of 5G SA, we really need to have a clear path of operationalizing and monetizing 5G SA. And to operationalize, the 5G SA, it's really important to have holistic orchestration capability to be able to orchestrate the infrastructure domain, the NAV domain, the SDN domain, and even the legacy domain. And if we want to monetize it, we need to have a clear focus on the API strategy to enable new business model, the platform business model, but also the solution business model. And especially on the latter one, it means that we really need to run innovative partner program, drive both technical, operational, and commercial synergy with the entire ICT ecosystem, but also a new mindset, innovation mindset, co-creating, co-innovating with the customer, helping driving demand for those transformational use case, and also trying to have a top-down approach. This is not about technical requirement. This is about understanding the business and operational requirement of the customers, and then translate into, technical requirement and technical architecture. Thank you.
Great. Neil, you look like you're...
I think it's about leadership, actually. I made a comment a few weeks ago that if you were to get the leadership of Google and the leadership of my friends here at Vodafone together for a hackathon, who do you think would win it? And I think we have a challenge whereby our leadership doesn't actually, in telco, not everywhere, but in many places, do they really understand the art of the possible? And are they really stretching their organizations to what the art of the possible is? Some are. Two of our customers, Deutsche Telekom and British Telecom, they have a CNF cloud-native platform, one delivering IMS very successfully, the other with 30 million SIMs running here in the UK. In fact, if you're on the EE network right now, you're on that cloud platform. And what it was about with both those organizations was about setting the kind of big hairy goals of we want to deliver this, and also recognizing that where we are as telcos is not a great place, and that telcos need a service delivery platform that scales in the way that the cloud providers can scale. Today, lots of the cloud guys, it's hard to argue. If you visit Israel and you see all these new startups, they're just launching stuff on AWS like every day. And telcos need that sort of capability. So I also agree with the panel where it says we need strong use cases. But I think it's fair to say we're going to have those use cases. So are we saying, hey, we're never going to have a platform until we've got a use case? The reality is we're going to have these use cases. We need to be able to build them. We need to be able to roll them out. We need to be able to service our own infrastructure. We might even need to emulate old legacy technology as a path to getting rid of it, and we see that in things like X25 today. So in my mind, my challenge to the kind of leadership of, and especially the kind of technical leadership is Kubernetes came out in 2014. You've had long enough, right? And this goes back to the sort of previous discussion. The guys at Red Hat, with OpenShift, have made it actually really easy to deploy this. It's about getting off your backside and doing it, and then building a platform that you can go out and then actually attack the market and sell and serve services and stand up new things really quickly, as opposed to, we need to spend 6 weeks ordering equipment for the IT part. So in my mind, how do we really build that capability? So actually, customers don't care about the cloud infrastructure. They care about the service that they've got. How do we get telcos so that we stop talking about things like radios on poles, servers in cupboards, and all that stuff, and start focusing on the services that people care about? In Apple's presentation last night, did you hear them once talk about data centers or poles or infrastructure to deliver the Apple goggles that they talked about? not a single thing. And that is where telco needs to get to, is to embrace technologies in a way where they can actually deliver them. And that's my kind of frustration to some extent.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the opportunity space is enormous, right? But to be able to innovate the service layer, we need first, it's not as easy as it is. We need to innovate the infrastructure layer and the connectivity layer. So, I mean, we need to take into account that, as you say, we're not in an easy space, right, in an easy place currently. We have a lot of CapEx to spend to virtualize the infrastructure, to deploy, to progress on the virtualizing the connectivity and the network services, and then automating all the entire life cycle, making our operational fully, data-driven. And then after that, we can innovate the service delivery, and as you say, and the service creation especially, and being able to add new capability in a matter of, 8 weeks. And for that, we are starting doing that, where, we use the same ways of working that the cloud providers are using, where we have, a product owner, a scrum master, a cloud architect, a business sponsors that helps to sponsors a value prop of a certain capability, create an MVP in 8 weeks, but it requires times to scale these ways of working on everything. We are doing this, for example, on the energy function, because we are using a big data platform, but to scale it in all the connectivity services is going to take time, and we need to really go step by step.
But you would agree with me that we're behind where we should be?
Of course, I agree, and I would love to do the hackathon. Actually, this is something that we are trying to do it as well. It's nice because it drives an innovation mindset across the entire organization. And I think it's really important that, we have new mindset and new ways of working.
Felicien, what's your perspective on that? We've got quite some polarized views.
I think everything you say is correct, yes. I mean, from the system integration part, I mean, definitely seeing all of the operator, going in that direction. I mean, specifically around telco cloud, especially in the tier one, I would say, everybody is, implementing one. There's definitely a move towards more horizontal platform, with the ultimate goal to run as many possible as the function on the same cloud. I would say the main hurdle really at that level, and going back to the point of, on collaboration, here that Francesca raised, that's probably one of the most important points, is having the NEPs, basically, the network function provider, really to collaborate as well as an ecosystem, because there's still a big push to deliver vertically integrated stack that are fully delivered by the network providers. Now, as an industry, I would say, most of the virtualization vendor, Red Hat here, is pushing very hard actually to enable that with specific program to actually test early with the network function vendors. We do that as well. Within WWT, we offer central labs to test early. So working with the operator, building a telco cloud which is effectively, digital twin of, the one delivered in production, and test early with the vendors. So give them a safe environment where they can validate, a POC or a pilot of the specific function early, and then move on to a telecom test lab. So I would say that's one of the main trends we're seeing. In general, I think it's, we're seeing about 10 to 25% of the function being containerized. So obviously it's quite a large swath of legacy VNF that needs to be migrated onto an horizontal cloud. So there's the need to be able to support traditional VNF and CNF. Definitely a big push around automation. So, and here there's a really a need to hire new type of resources to have product managers. So we're starting to see this in the telco cloud product manager space, product owner indeed, which ultimately helps that collaboration both with business units and with the network provider. We're seeing, Vodafone's doing a great job at that. Working as a community, actually, putting in place processes where They can give early access to central repository to the vendor and have a clear CI/CD/CD pipeline that they can follow. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the biggest hurdle, really, is the collaboration.
Yep. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So CNF's 10 to 15% today. Vast majority of softwareized network functions are still virtualized, but that's the direction of travel, and needs to be driven from the top by the leadership. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. Telcos have largely built these clouds to host IT applications and now increasingly network functions. And they're using public cloud services to host some of those applications, not all, by no means the majority. When it comes to network functions like the mobile core, what do you think are the pros and cons of using public cloud versus private cloud? Does it make sense to use public cloud for these very sensitive workloads at all? Now, Neil, I know you've got some strong thoughts on this, so share your perspectives, and we'll hear from you.
Yeah, look, the public cloud guys are awesome. They've created, Google have created Kubernetes and given us this great capability, right? There's no question that these guys aren't idiots, right? They know what they're doing. But actually, when you look at it, what they've done is they've taken a bunch of servers, stuck them in a cupboard, and automated them. Right? Tell me I'm wrong. Right? No one's saying I'm wrong. So, and what the telcos have done, hey, we take equipment, we stick them in a cupboard, we turn it on, we connect it to fiber. Doesn't sound that different, right? So, I mean, if I was at BT, I'd be encouraging all my competition to deploy as much into the public cloud as possible. Because what my strategy would be to build on the BT network cloud and actually have our own capability that is, will actually run telco workloads. So I'd encourage you all to try and run a secure voice gateway on public cloud and see how far you get with that. I'd encourage you to think about the control plane and the things you need to do in control plane with legal intercept and all the other demands that telcos have. Actually, where is your workload? If you put it in the public cloud, do you know where it is? Is it in this country? Is it in another country? Is it in Liverpool? Is it in Edinburgh? You don't know, right? That's the other thing is just, if you're providing a service that people's lives depend upon, just bear that in mind, right? People's lives depend upon it. Do you really think that you can outsource the core part that makes that work? Because in my mind, that feels nuts to me, right? And having been involved in some big, even the pandemic recently where we're having to build out extra capacity and build out extra capability and actually also build out things that entertain people at the same time. I know that having our own capability allowed us to do things that I would never have been able to get into the public cloud. The second part to that is around talent, right? And how do we have the talent that really loves building big train sets where they can automate it, they can deploy AI onto it, they can do all sorts of other stuff that actually if you've just outsourced all your infrastructure, you won't be able to do. Now, are there things you can put in the public cloud? There are, for sure. There's some customer stuff. Your customers are in the public cloud. There's no getting away from that. So and this is another opportunity for telcos that I largely see them missing, which is how do we build the right networking around all these clouds? Because, of course, you can't be in one cloud. You have to be in two, or at least 2.5. And how are we enabling a network? And when you go and talk to some of the biggest businesses out there, they say, hey, Neil, this cloud thing that you sold us on was great, but I still have as many network issues. I still have days where my call center can't access my database. We haven't fixed any of those issues because the legacy of what was there before hasn't changed. We've just moved the data into something in a different cupboard. So in my mind, we have to have technical leadership here. It's a crucially important part, even more so when you think about optical transmission with digital signal processor, all the accelerators that we need in RAN. If we don't understand that well, then I question what value telcos are going. And actually, hey, Amazon Prime, you should just bring it on. Launch your service tomorrow, because there will be no value in being in a telco. We'll just be running these conduits with this fiber stuff in it that people will be, wondering about, where did that come from? So that's my take on it, and I'm really passionate about it, as you can tell.
Hrvoje, your perspective, please.
Few comments from my side. So Regulatory-wise, yes, there will be always some constraints, and I cannot enter this discussion because I'm not a legal guy. But technically, there are some advantages and disadvantages. If we look at the public cloud, and on the other side, if we look at, for example, 5G network, what is 5G all about? It's about the better speeds and lower latency. That's the essence of the 5G. And then on top of this, some extra services, etc. I think lower latency will be the crucial one to drive the new services, new businesses on top of the telco networks, like autonomous driving, telemedicine, and all these things. Everything will require really extremely low latency. And if you look just geographically, once you move to the public cloud, it's just a matter of fact where this cloud really is, where this data center really is. So potentially, or realistically, you're adding a bit of more latency to your call flows. I consider this as a disadvantage. On the other side, I fully agree about the competencies. How can we, as telco operators in our local markets or global markets, compete with hyperscalers, attracting really good experts to build our clouds? This is really, I have to be honest, this is really a big struggle from operator point of view. You know, myself competing with some Google guys, AWS guys, etc., in this pool of people that we would like to attract to build the cloud, etc. Third, control. I mean, complete story about the cloud, yeah, let's migrate there, reduce our cost, etc., etc. Makes sense, but technically and commercially, I think we'll lose control if we go in that direction, because I believe that once we migrate really important crucial functions, business crucial functions to public cloud, I think that chances going in opposite direction are quite low. You know, I think that maybe in the future we'll migrate from one public cloud to another public cloud, but once we leave our physical data centers, it will never go back. So there is a huge risk of having commercial discussions, I don't know, 5 years after this decision, you know, when you want to prolong the contract, etc. So this might be a risk in the future also commercial-wise. Yeah, plenty of things to think about for long-term strategy.
And you assume it's cheaper in the cloud, which isn't always the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when it comes to hyperscaler, it's good to distinguish the different synergy work streams that we can have with them, right? Starting with the data. We're all defining new data strategy and data architecture, and to break the data silos, for sure, we need the data pipeline and data management of the cloud providers, and we will probably go for a hybrid cloud deployment. If we look at the application, the OSS and BSS, as we remodernize, we need to re-platform, and it's important, again, to use the cloud capability for that. If we look at introducing new cognitive capability into business function or the way we operate the network, again, I guess using the AI platform of cloud, it's beneficial there. And if we look at innovating business model, we need to integrate our connectivity with distributed cloud platform to enable transformational use case. But when it comes to network workload, I agree with what has been just said. We prefer to have it on-prem and a private cloud because it's all about, you know, delivering customer experience. We want to be in control, but especially security. As everything becomes distributed, the network workload, the application architecture, and as we become really a catalyst of, you know, digital services, all the public safety services, it's really important. You know, security and connectivity go hand to hand. So having the network virtualized network function on-prem on a private cloud for us is essential.
Okay, good, that's clear. So IT, OSS, BSS, analytics, all of that, quite safe to put that in public cloud, but for network functions, probably the majority will remain in telco's private clouds. Is that the general consensus?
I'm not sure I would say OSS in the cloud. Of course, put your data, you know, put it into Google. They're the geniuses of data, right? But you're actually, the cloud's a sideshow on that. What you want is Google's data functions. Just happens they have a server to put them on, right? And for sure, you if you're going to pick the best guy to do data with, then it's Google. There's no question about it, right? And it's irrespective of GCP or anything else. But you need to be able to manage and operate your network in the worst possible scenarios. So for example, we had this pandemic for 2 years, and everyone's kind of network management plan for a big disaster started off with, well, we'll just go to the backup NOC. Well, you couldn't do that, right? So the backup NOC became your bedroom. So, having the flexibility to be able to move your OSS and do that yourself without, well, what's the connectivity to Amazon, and do we have enough bandwidth, and is it going to affect other customers? You need to, if you've got this certainty around, here's what I know I can do, and it's 100% in my control, that sort of scenario is amazing. And then when you plug in government demands, that only increases your need to be able to do that.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, Felicien.
That point. I mean, so there's quite a few telcos actually run across a large number of data center just for resiliency. I mean, typically, the web scaler don't actually have that, that footprint on a region basis. So, I mean, that's one thing, the first operator we need to change. I mean, the UK is pretty small, but I mean, there's a much bigger country where you see web scaler going and trying to sell their own infrastructure. It's like they've got one data center in the middle, very fast region. And so, yeah, back to the latency. I mean, it's just not feasible. Yeah? So there's quite a few things to change. I mean, in the UK, we've got TSAs. I mean, right now, I'm not seeing anyone putting workload into the public cloud, to be fair. And then there's financial. I mean, we mentioned the performance. There's some workloads that just need to be on all the time. If you can't, bring them up and down because of performance, there's little value, to be fair, in putting it somewhere where you've got easy access to resources. And then the fourth one, last one is, the operator procurement process. I mean, typically they're just used to buying a large capex investment, which is just not how the web scaler operates. So yeah, I mean, quite a few things to tackle here to make it happen.
Yeah, very good. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We're sort of revisiting something that had been mentioned earlier, and it's that, of course, operators don't just have their private clouds for network functions. They don't just have one private cloud, that is. They've got multiple different cloud stacks, different types of servers, operating systems, versions of OpenStack, Kubernetes, etc. And this has happened because each of the network vendors has typically specified particular cloud specs to guarantee the performance of their network functions. And that means that then deployments essentially end up using a vertically integrated cloud stack for each network vendor, and often multiple different stacks, even for one vendor. But then that leads to a lot of operating expense. And I think the aim is to try to move towards a common cloud, a horizontal cloud. I think that's something you mentioned earlier, Felicien, for all network functions. Now, is this an achievable goal? If so, how long will it take to get there? And what might the cost savings be? Francesca, if we could start off with you on this one.
Yeah, good question. So we're using already an horizontal approach for both VNF and CNF. And for that was a principle that was key because we wanted to break, the vendor lock-in and break the silos, basically, because otherwise we wouldn't been able to achieve zero-touch automation. And we are having this horizontal approach, to be honest, for everything, even for the AI platform, because we know, we're seeing sometimes in the market and in the industry, a very use case driven, integrated approach. But if we want to be lean and simple and, achieve operational efficiency, having an horizontal approach for cloud platform, AI platform, and any other platform is key.
Any other perspectives?
Yeah, just to add on top of that one, fully agree with this one. I mean, going into direction of more clouds, it's just actually ending up in the same situation that you were before. It's just called cloud, but at the end of the day, you are just building your functions on top of certain number of silos. So definitely not good way forward. I don't think that you need some kind of scientific business case in order to prove that this is going to cost on short and long term much more, not just from the licensing point of view, integration point of view, but also again from your FTE point of view, from your expert point of view. So definitely chaotic strategy, I would say. Yeah.
I'm going to give an example of something that I did. So look, we don't need multiple platforms. In fact, we can't afford them. If the industry doesn't realize that, then I don't know what we need to do to signpost it. But here's an example of something I did with a vendor that drove me to frustration with their moaning. I got 3 laptops and I put 3 different distributions of Linux on them. And I asked them to tell me which one was which distribution. And it took them about 2 hours to do it. I removed a few things to make it obvious, because there was some obvious things. But the stark reality is Linux is Linux is Linux. And there's very few things that are different about it. Yeah, some drivers, if you're using the laptop, the front ends are different. Some of them have got very specific capabilities, actually, but the kernel is the kernel, right? And yes, you can compile different kernels, but that's not that difficult. So my challenge is when people say, well, I need my own stack. I was like, why? Well, actually, it turns out that if you try it, you actually don't need as much of your own stack as you think you do. And actually, in the network cloud I deployed, that has got multi-vendors running on one platform. It's got Oracle, it's got Ericsson, it's got Nokia, it's got a company called Quilt. And all of them are running on the same ultimate platform. So it is doable, but again, you've got to set that as your key principle, and you've got to believe it and drive towards it. The minute you say, hey, well, okay, we'll just have this other thing, it's game over, you're done, because you'll never walk back from it. So, I got a lot of flack for that, for kind of sticking to that as a principle, but actually it's paid off massively now, because they can deploy any sort of workload at lightning speed. So, for sure, hey, and I work for a vendor now, so I'm educating them on why we're not going to do that anymore. So, it's all about being really prescriptive about, here's the platform we're building, here's how we're going to automate it, here's the operational parameters around it, and here are the things that we're not going to do. And we've talked a lot about Apple. I'll remind you of Steve Jobs' most famous quote: focus is about saying no, not saying yes. So you want to stay focused on what you want to do, start saying no to a few suppliers. And let me tell you, they'll react quickly. And they have reacted quickly, I've seen it. And I've seen where they will come together. So in my mind, there's no need to build separate platforms, and actually our industry can't afford it. So it's a bit of a red herring, really.
Felicien, is that common horizontal approach something you see in reality amongst lots of operators?
Yeah, definitely. I see the intent. Most operators want to implement an horizontal platform. As the leaders in that space, Vodafone, I think, definitely have done a fantastic job there. I think back to what Neil was saying earlier about leadership. From the top, you need to say the same message so that the organization as a whole is pushing everybody to leverage that strategy. In terms of the main hurdle, again, I would it's back to the collaboration we mentioned earlier. I mean, you need everybody to sort of drink the same drink. But ultimately, I mean, the main challenge generally around integration between some of the layers. I would say the main challenge today, especially as you move towards containers, is really that sort of CNI layer, which brings complexity. And there's a good reason why the network provider are pushing for their own stack, is they spend quite a lot of time integrating a stack they know work well. So it's about a sort of give and take. When you're implementing an horizontal cloud, it's about potentially drawing the line somewhere in terms of giving them more control, at least at one level. So we're seeing that, for example, at where you make the separation between the Vim layer, the virtual infrastructure layer, and deploying a container Kubernetes on top. So maybe give the choice of the Kubernetes, for instance. At least you can have a common foundation, and then you can manage multiple Kubernetes on top of it. But again, back to the collaboration. I mean, the easiest way to make it happen is to start early. The earlier they ship their code, to a lab environment where you can validate it, the quicker you can actually make it work on the horizontal cloud of choice, whichever one you went with. And then the other thing is, again, I was mentioning getting everybody on board. I think it's really key to get all of the part of the organization on that message. So when you're issuing RFI, RFP, just make it clear that it's a need that you have, that you want that function to run on a specific cloud construct. And the other one is the financial. I mean, we do a lot of work with a company called ACG Research. They've got a very good tool, financial tools, called the Business Analytic Engine, which enable you to model your own telco cloud, your horizontal cloud. So then you can very granularly see where each part of the environment impact the service cost. Also, you can use that for planning. So that's one of those things we've been doing a lot over the last couple of years. It's really introducing this type of best practices to actually accelerate the use of the horizontal cloud.
Yeah, can I just build on one thing? I 100% agree with all that. The other part that a lot of operators are forgetting about is the network side. So let me tell you, Kubernetes and networking is a disaster, right? Just the way that they've built it and the way Google needed it. And when you think about it from Google's perspective, they already had a whole load of automation with OpenFlow in their data centers. Where I see operators struggling is on that network side of it. So you need a platform like the one we've got at Juniper called Contrail CN2 that's going to orchestrate the network side of it so that when you bring up a workload, you've got a network path to that workload and a network path to the driver of the workload. And that's where we see a lot of operators struggling, is that they haven't thought enough about the kind of workload to container to the whole data center network to the outside world and how to bring all that together, and it's crucial. This is actually what the hyperscalers have done a really good job of, is building all that capability, and you need to mirror it. It's not that difficult, it's easily achievable, but it requires you to, again, to think about it, plan it, and then kind of get out and build it and trial a few things.
Is that the same thing as a service mesh, or is that a different concept?
Well, the service mesh is a part of it for sure, and that's one way of doing that. It's not the only way, but understanding at a kind of granular level some of the and there's tons of stuff about this there's tons of papers on, if you went to KubeCon, you would have seen loads of stuff on this last year, and last month as well. So understanding the relationships between that and the workloads, and kind of preparing for them early. And also in the kind of design through your own servers, what's your PCI bus, what do you need DPDK, or is SR VIO going to cope with it? Yeah, that's the one. But really being certain about your ability to create, these paths in the network really easy is crucially important. Otherwise, you've just got a bunch of servers that you can't get traffic in and out of.
Interesting. Okay. That does.
Do you want to ask if the audience has any questions, because we're awfully close to being out of time?
Yes, thank you, Annie. There's a chap just up there. Yeah. Don't want to eat into your lunch break, so one quick question, please.
Lunch is for wimps.
Thank you. Since the title of this, Ray Motor from ACG, it's the progress and the evolution that we're making in telco cloud. One of the things I wanted to talk about, it's, we talked about skill sets and talent, right? We talked about having, what I call visibility and all the details, but one of the things we've missed in this area is Fee touched on it a little bit, is a few years ago we did an economic study for a cloud provider, and we did one for tier one, right? And the cloud provider, just the cost of one server from an OpEx perspective was $600. Doesn't sound like much, but when you look at the number of servers, it was a high magnitude adding it all up. For that cloud provider, it was 6 cents. So the mindset of everything that these hyperscalers do comes in with simplification, automation, and if it doesn't fit those two requirements, they don't touch it, right? So with this telco evolution, this was a few years ago, 3 to 4 years ago, have we changed, at least from the carrier side? Have the economics gotten better or worse from that side of it?
I can tell you from operator point of view, I would say yes, definitely yes. In last 2-3 years, yes, we did really magnificent job. But have we done it fully? Have we done it, like on 100%? No. Am I satisfied? No. I think we could have done it better. If we compare, our pace compared to the hyperscalers, it's not that good, definitely. Why? We can always find some excuses, etc. It's not our core competences, core business, but definitely there is a reason why hyperscalers are called hyperscalers, because there is really massive thing behind them. Simply talking about the payload and how we handle the payload, price per megabyte, etc. It went down really. We really optimized and we really implemented new technologies. We know tons of automation, etc. Again, compared to hyperscalers, not that good. Because difficult competition. If we call them competition, because I consider them more like partners. If I look at my capability to build data centers compared to hyperscalers, it's not that good, and I don't dream that it ever will be. It's their core business. I'm pretty sure that they will be better in doing this. But on the other side, I think functions are my core business, and I don't believe that in near future, they will be able to handle this as we can do it internally.
See, there's an interesting challenge, right? Actually, most of the hyperscalers here in the UK haven't built their own data centers. They're using other people's. And I can go buy it myself. In fact, I did do once upon a time, right? I think it's what's in 2012, when AWS launched, they weren't a hyperscaler. They were a bookshop, right? So where do you start? Are we saying, hey, the hyperscaler business, the cloud business is done, there's 3 guys, that's all it is, closed? Can you imagine 170 years ago if that's what happened to telco? There'd be BT, AT&T, and Orange. That would be it. There wouldn't be anyone else. Of course not. So of course there's an opportunity. Is a challenging one for sure, but Ray, if you've got the mindset that you've just articulated, it's absolutely achievable. 100% it is. And I think it's essential, because I think having just 3 guys that can do compute, I'm not sure that's the future of where the world should be headed. And I look at some of the other big fangs, if you like, rather than hyperscalers. Apple are building their own data centers. Why is that? Of course they use the hyperscalers as well, but they also build their own data centers because they can get efficiency. They can do the things they want to do that perhaps they can't in the cloud. So in my mind, be really, again, think about, what that model is. It's more about the attitude than it is about the technology. Last year, a couple of years ago, we were trying to roll out a CDN during COVID. It's really difficult. We just got a crack team together and we just did it. We just went out and built it. That's the attitude that we need to do, is just to go out and build it and make it happen, because largely we're sitting in meeting rooms debating a business case that's probably not going to get any better, no matter how many times you adjust it. But if you can go out there and optimize after you've built, and you know where you are, and you know where you can get to, and you know the parameters of what's being delivered, absolutely you can get to that point. And actually, hyperscalers have done a load of work for us. They've come out with Kubernetes, they've done OpenFlow, they've done SDN, they've done all this other stuff. We can just take that for nothing. So I think it's incumbent upon us to not miss that opportunity. And I think that, if I think about it from a British point of view or a territorial point of view, I think it's crucial that we have that capability from a sovereign point of view.
Did you have one last word, Francesca, or should we let these kind people go for lunch?
Yeah, just very, very quickly. Simplification, we're doing a great progress. We're really removing legacy, and we're accelerating that transformation from legacy to cloud native. Automation, we have a clear roadmap of capability across everything, really, the services, the infrastructure, but I think what is slowing us down is the data problem, because we have centralized the capability in terms of automation. We want to have a one-to-many approach, but the data, it's still, we have really data challenges, data silos that doesn't enable us to go fast in terms of automation as much as we wanted.
We do have time to take one very quick question, one very quick answer from the panel.
Oh, let's see. So I'm working for a vendor. We deliver CNFs into cloud environments of our operators. And we always thought cloud native is for us as a vendor, we deliver container image and Helm chart, that's it. And then what we see coming back from the operators, from our customers, is saying, yeah, we deployed 10 CNFs and all there are exposed via the same Kubernetes node IP addresses to the outside world. And I think what I have to do with that? Cloud native, this network implementation is in the responsibility of the cloud infrastructure provider. So we have kind of blurred line where the responsibilities should be defined, left-hand side, right-hand side. It's somehow blurring. And I cannot be, as a vendor, responsible for ingress, egress, gateways, whatever. How do you see that?
I think it's another good reason not to go down that path. Just avoid it. Run your own infrastructure, you don't have to worry about it. Basically. If you got operators that want to put CNFs into the public cloud, I have to say I find that astonishing. Having done the maths and done the studies, it blows my mind when people say that. For me, what it feels like is it's too hard to build this cloud stuff. We'll just use this easy one that's conveniently over there. That's my take on it. In terms of the networking and the fact that there's so much limited networking in Kubernetes, 100% agree with that. There's a load of work going on that right now, as I'm sure you're probably better aware of than I am. There's platforms like CN2 that can abstract that and bring in a whole load of other functionality. There's a few other guys that are doing something similar. There's eBPF as well, which will also bring in a massive amount of capability, right? That most folks aren't even aware what that stands for. So, there are so many things that are out there that we can just grab onto and build with. That we just, this is my point about leadership. How are we challenging folks to make sure, hey, what is eBPF and what's our program around it? And so few telcos have got a program around it. It's incredible, but it's such a strong, feature-rich thing. So I kind of hear what you're saying. I agree with it, but I try and avoid it and just make life easier.
Fantastic. Shall we give the panelists a round of applause, Annie?